You don't have to be from a particular background to solve a problem in a particular subject area. I did not grow up thinking that I was going to be building the largest cannabis distributor. I was always excited by the scale and the complexity of the problem. When you open up your comfort zone, what it is that you want to or you can work on, I think that you can make a much bigger impact on this world. Hi, my name is Jun and I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Nabis. Cannabis is a massive market. Nationally, cannabis is a $25 billion market. Today, Nabis accounts for about 20% of all cannabis products consumed in California legally. Nabis is the world's largest cannabis wholesale platform and distributor. Our team is about 350 strong today. We move about $1 billion worth of products a year. We've raised $45 million in equity funding to date. I was born and raised in Seoul, South Korea. When I was about 14, my older brother that was 16 was diagnosed with leukemia. And as a result, I ended up spending a lot of time alone because my dad was working and my mom was mostly at the hospital taking care of my brother. I think I started really enjoying the freedom that's associated with making your own decisions. And I think I also learned early on that the decisions that I make can have consequences. My brother recovered from that ailment, still managed to keep his rigor in academics, so much so that he was accepted into Harvard University. And I think in my young competitive self, I was like, if he can go, maybe I can go too, you know? Fortunately, I was accepted into Harvard and I moved to Massachusetts when I was 18. So after I graduated college, where I studied applied mathematics and computer science, I decided to join Facebook, now Meta, as a software engineer. And I was there for about 2 years. One thing that I was slightly disappointed by at being at Facebook was that I was kind of evaluated on a singular axis, that of being a good engineer. And I felt that some of the other skills that I had, soft skills, communication skills, sales, whatever it may be, was undervalued. And I had also been given advice that entrepreneurship is more about seeing what waves are out there and deciding to surf that wave, as opposed to trying to create that wave yourself. In 2017, there were a couple of those waves that I could see. One was machine learning and artificial intelligence. The other was cryptocurrency. And third and last was actually cannabis, as cannabis was legalized in California in 2017. The medical cannabis market in California actually existed for about 30 years, since 1996. I saw a completely different behavior of people consuming the products than what I had been told in Virginia, in Korea, that oftentimes cannabis is viewed as this unfairly addictive substance that can lead to abuse and unwinding of someone's life. And what I saw, consumed in the right context, it can actually bring people closer together. It can allow you to access parts of yourself and your brain that you typically don't have access to. I felt that people in different places can have radically different views and different ways of living life. I think that experience helped a lot, making that jump to work in the cannabis industry. There was some traditional behavior of transacting cannabis, but it was very loosely regulated. First of all, the traditional players in logistics are not permitted to ship cannabis. And two was that because it was a regulated market that was somewhat in the gray, I had a lot of trouble finding trustworthy drivers that would take products and deliver that on time. We felt that that was a big enough problem to solve. So I started Nabis about 6 years ago with my best friend Vince. I was probably coding for 60, 70 hours a week and driving for another 40. Our value proposition was very simple. You call us, we deliver your things on time, and we don't steal anything in the middle. We were simply a reliable professional party that helped licensed operators move cannabis products from one place to another. The product market fit seemed very obvious. Every week that we were delivering, we were seeing an increase in the volume. So one week we were doing 5 deliveries a week, the next week we were doing 10, and then the week after that we were doing 20.
That's frankly how we sort of started to develop the software platform in order to, automate a lot of the day-to-day deliveries we were doing. And so as the market started legalizing and ramping up, the software became much more valuable to the market as more and more deliveries needed to be made, more product was being sold, the business was growing significantly. And at the time, and even still today, given cannabis is a regulated market, you can't really find off-the-shelf technology from other industries because they don't necessarily work with cannabis companies. And so we, in building our own, created a lot of value for operators in the space to be able to ship products from point A to point B.
So simply put, Nabis moves cannabis products from brands to retailers. When we approach a cannabis brand, we provide a range of services from essentially picking up their products from anywhere in California, their production facility, bring it back to our warehouse for storage, and upon direction of the customer, essentially the customer submitting an order onto our website, or it could be a retailer placing an order on our marketplace that would essentially trigger us to pick and pack that order and then send it out for final dispatch to the retailer. The biggest differentiation for us is that we actually control the physical movement of goods. This is very much the Amazon argument about controlling the process from end to end, where because we hold the inventory and we control the physical infrastructure, when a retailer presses that button, they do so with the certainty that the product will arrive in 2 days. It takes 10 years to build a great company. It took us about 2 years to convince a bank to work with us and essentially house our funds. It took us far longer than, I'd say, traditional companies, despite our traction and revenue, for us to attract investor capital. I remember a time when we sat down with an investor. A gentleman came in, heard our pitch. We were shipping maybe about $50,000 to $100,000 worth of products per week at the time. We had told him, hey, invest in us. We'll take this money and in 1 year, we'll have 10% of the California market. And the investor simply said, impossible. And he walked out. There's so many instances where we were said no to. It didn't even feel all that demoralizing. I think in some ways it built up this vindictive drive in me to prove this person wrong. I think at first we raised from friends and family because we had felt like the company was too small. We didn't quite feel like we had the access to the investors to go speak with them. There were a ton of large institutional investors that simply said, we love what you're doing, we respect you, but we can't touch this space yet, sorry. There's too much headline risk or regulatory risk associated with investing in a cannabis company back in the days in 2018.
But a lot of VCs do also see the market opportunity. I think they see how fast the market's growing, how big it is already, how big it's going to get. I think for what it's worth, people don't deny the fact that people enjoy consuming cannabis. And so at the end of the day, it's just what business solution can you come up with and execute on? And so that's been something that Jun and I have kind of constantly had to prove to investors time and time again. And a lot of support for the investors who came on earlier on before we even had a product and anything. I think because Jun and I come from the tech industry, Y Combinator backed, I think people are also surprised at how much we know about the cannabis industry as well and about operations that we've had to learn over time. And, I think that speaks to just me and Jun just being engineers at heart. We're hard problem solvers and we enjoy taking complex issues and making sense and meaning out of it, which is ultimately the challenge of distribution as well. We're, basically taking a very messy part of the supply chain and streamlining it for everyone else to be able to operate more simplistically. Our earlier rounds were comprised of a lot of tech luminaries and tech funds. So for instance, we have Paul Buchheit as an investor who created Gmail. We have, Justin Kahn, who is one of the founders of Twitch, several other funds like that. So there's a lot of people that come from all walks of life that see value in supporting this industry. Some see it as like a strong business opportunity. Some, enjoy cannabis as a product to see it for its medical benefits, how it can help, athletes in sports, how it can help people with diseases and sicknesses. As we've gotten larger, I think we've, attracted a healthy assortment of investors coming from many different walks of life and industries.
I think I want to be a career entrepreneur, someone who, regardless of the subject, can solve very complex and large problems repetitively over and over again. You don't have to be from a particular background to solve a problem in a particular subject area. I did not grow up thinking that I was going to be building the largest cannabis distributor. Anyone that says you need a certain set of experiences to tackle a set of problems may be misguided. When you open up your comfort zone, what it is that you want to or you can work on, I think that you can make a much bigger impact on this world. I think that Nabis is just the first chapter of my journey, and I'm very fortunate and I feel blessed for the growth that we've experienced here. But I tell Vince all the time, if Nabis were to be sold today and me laid off, or if we were to go out of business tomorrow, I would just do it all over again. It'd just be challenging to rebuild everything that we have, but I think that's the life that I'm looking forward to.